rather than primarily focusing on negative aspects in terms of reducing the negative indicators, is there a way we could use technology to infuse positive elements such as a playful behavior to provide an opportunity for the farm animals such as pig to explore that aspects higher than the negative aspects? So the artificial intelligence comes quite handy.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Swine Canada podcast. I am Dan Columbus and I will be your host for today's episode. And with me today, I have Dr. Suresh Neethirajan, who is an associate professor and university research chair in digital livestock farming at Dalhousie University. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan.
So Suresh, just because some people might not be aware of who you are and what you do, I'll just ask that you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background and journey so far.
Yeah, thank you. As you said, I'm a faculty with a joint appointment between the Faculty of Agriculture and Faculty of Computer Science at Dalhousie University at Halifax and Truro, Nova Scotia. I used to be a faculty at the University of Guelph for 8 years, closely working with a variety of scientists and researchers from the Ontario Veterinary College and Agricultural College. Last year, I moved from Wageningen University in Research, Netherlands, where I was an associate professor for almost 4.5 years.
You've been to some of the big names in agriculture for for your journey. It's very interesting. So I guess we can get going on today's topic, which is specifically artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. I know this has been especially the Internet of Things has been a huge topic, even when I first started and everything. And, so maybe start by where you see how or how these technologies are being applied to enhance sustainability and reduce the environmental impacts in pig production.
Yeah. So when we look at the swine or pig production, typically it's more of a per individual animal level compared to chickens, where we do a group level or a flock level management. So the goal here is to how do we move away from subjective understanding and measurement of indicators of welfare and assessment of health to more of an objective way. Can we be able to use technology to bring down the time to results, quick turn and expedited decision making of for the farmers? Is it possible to make the decision then and there, near farm or near animal, rather than having to wait for a few days? What are the ways in which we can move away from reactive to predictive through proactive approaches? So artificial intelligence and automated way of collecting data really comes quite handy in enabling decision support system, looking at welfare and health aspects of swine production.
Yes, that's interesting. So what would be maybe some concrete examples? Maybe I guess we could start with sustainability first, and some of the things that you've seen that are specifically being used and advances being made.
Yeah. So when we look at the sustainability, we have to look from a broader holistic lens. From the animal-based measures, we can look at physiology, behavior, welfare, health, and immunological aspects. So a happy animal is a productive animal. So we can also look at from the emotional well-being or the affective states of these pigs. So what are the ways we could provide and offer an enriched quality of life for these farm animals during the time they live in the farm? So, for example, if there is a bit more aggression quality, sometimes piglets, they tend to do tail biting quite a bit. What are the ways we could avoid or reduce the incidences for tail biting? Rather than primarily focusing on negative aspects in terms of reducing the negative indicators. Is there a way we could use technology to infuse positive elements such as a playful behavior to provide an opportunity for the farm animals such as pig to explore that aspects higher than the negative aspects? So the artificial intelligence comes quite handy. For example, a facial recognition system for the pigs. If we combine automated camera systems, machine vision, computer vision systems to collect real-time facial images of the pigs, and also along with the combination of vocalization, sound, as well as thermal signatures via thermal camera. So when we combine these three data, regular video, heat signatures via thermal camera, and the sound data, we can enable a multimodal understanding of the indicators of the welfare for these pigs in almost near real time, and assist the farmers to intervene if there is a need be, and also continuously offer positive enriched quality of life for the animals.
Yeah, so you mentioned all of these different technologies, and specifically with welfare and the emotions of the animals. So where, how close are we to developing this that we can actually use it and interpret, and make decisions based on the information that we're getting?
So, from our group, we have developed a system using computer vision technologies based on the facial features. For example, the eye white regioning. If the eye white becomes much higher, bigger in a very quick manner, we look at that particular indicator. We also look at the squinting of the eyes. We have an upper eyelid and lower eyelid. So, when the squinting happens, how much degree of angle that happens in the near the eyes, pursing of the snout, because sometimes they clench and the upper jaw and the lower jaw they squeeze. So certain angle we can measure using computer vision technologies. Of course, the posture of the ears. Sometimes the ear postures may be symmetrical, asymmetrical, very erect, droopy. We look at various positioning and posture of these ears in a particular context. So when we do a permutation and combination of all of these facial features along with thermal data, for example, when we collect thermal signatures, heat signatures on the facial regions close to the nostrils, there is inhalation and exhalation happens. There is a lot of distribution of heat signatures can be acquired. At the same time, when we collect data near the ear base, because ear base at the back of the left and the right ear is connected to the brain, right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain of the pigs, it gives an indirect indication of balance and the different affective states of these pigs. So we have multiple data, permutations and combinations. We also look at the body posture. Are they mounting? Are they jumping around? So from a particular context, using specific artificial intelligence algorithms, we would be able to say something about the specific emotions that they are going through. So we came up with about 13 different classes of emotions: frustration, disappointment, happiness, sad, aggression, so on and so forth. And then, based on a little bin, we did a series of experiments. We collected blood samples, we collected the hair samples, and looked for biochemical signatures such as cortisol, different hormonal indications, corticosteroid, and so on. So that gives a validation of whether it's truly in that particular emotion bin. So generally speaking, we divide the emotion into three major categories: positive, negative, and neutral. But under each of those, we can have certain subclasses and then certain gray zones. For example, there could be a positive neutral or a negative neutral zone in terms of the affective state of the pig. So we go on classifying based on the different categories. So the system we have developed has the capability to say something about what is it that particular emotion in that particular time. For example, when we look at the emotions of human beings, we never label a person as an angry person, because anger of a particular person is dependent on the context, dependent on the interactions that happens. So is the case with animals. It's always time dependent and context dependent, and then the emotions automatically changes. So that's why we say, when we use the word emotion, emotion, it is basically energy in motion. So, what are the different kinds of energy? One is the heat energy or the thermal energy. There is a huge variation due to thermoregulation of the body of the pigs. We also have biochemical energy, changes in the cortisol and hormone, and so on and so forth. And then physiological signals, for example, the respiratory rate, the heart rate, etc. But we are also looking at what we call as iceberg indicators. They are not very explicit indicators of emotions, but they could be buried like a iceberg. For example, a blink of an eye. So it may have certain nuances associated to it in a particular context that yet still need to be unraveled and looked at. There are also, for example, the ability of the pig to smell. They have really, really good intelligence in terms of smelling and differentiating different objects and components in the farm. So that has not yet been looked into. So how do we create a multimodal, holistic way of assessing the affective states and the emotions of these animals, so that we can understand them better to develop a novel way of enriching their quality of life, is what we are looking at.
Yeah, very interesting. When you're talking about classifying the emotions or categorizing the emotions, I'm wondering, and I'm not an ethologist, so I don't know if the research is out there. I assume it is, but what is that based on? Like, how do we know what emotion the animal is feeling? Just based on I don't know if that's on the facial or some other behavior, right? Like, how do we know that that's exactly what they're feeling?
Yeah, so we do a variety of collaborate with behavioral scientists and ethologists. We also collect data from the behavioral perspective. For example, we can induce or elicit an emotion. For example, the possibility of giving a playful, enriching material. It could be a just gentle rope which is tied into a specific shape. You expose it, the pigs chew, and then you remove it after some time. So, or you give a little food as a reward before the food is being eaten, taken by the pig. You immediately remove it. So there is an anticipation, and then there is a refusal of anticipation. So there is a sudden fluctuation in terms of changes of the emotions. So we can see based on the eye and based on the different futures. Sometimes we introduce noises. For example, there is a sudden noise is being introduced in an environment. They get startled and then they look. So they tend to react. Fight or flight situation happens. So we constantly record the data, and then using audio and video, and then collect information to assess whether it's a positive, negative, or neutral, and so on. So the farm animal emotion investigation is primarily based on human psychology. Paul Ekman is the guy who came up with different classes of emotions. Now, the facial recognition softwares are all developed for human beings. But again, we cannot directly apply that particular technology, the principles of Paul Ekman, for the farm animals, because, of course, we will be anthropomorphizing, which means we look from the lens of human beings. It's very distinct. We have lots of muscles and whatnot on the face, but animals, they have fur, a lot of fur. They don't have a lot of muscles. So, so there are very distinct differences. Sometimes we as a human being evolved in a certain way based on Darwinian. Even if a human being is sad inside, they try to smile, create a fake smile. this particular possibility is not available. It's not possible in animals. If they're sad, they're sad. If they are happy, frustrated, anger, they just express that straightforward way. So there is no mask phenomenon. It's easy to capture, understand the emotions from the macro expressions. But for humans, we have to go about micro expressions and the nano expressions in actually understanding what's going on. But it's distinct for animals. So in that sense, it's exciting. It's easy relatively, but still a lot of consensus need to happen among neuroscientists, ethologists, behavioral scientists, and animal scientists to come to a common ground of the level of affective states and level of the groups of emotions for pigs.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. So I guess we talk about that with, a lot of it is based on the human side of it. You talked about the technology. So I'm just wondering, what are the potential limitations with using this technology and implementing it?
Sometimes there may be a possibility of a true negative or false positive. So we have to always look from the context. Let's say in a pig farm, sometimes due to the litter and other related, hygiene conditions, there may be, it is often flies may be present. If a fly comes and sit in the ear of the pig, they just flap like this. Then the camera cannot take a picture. Oh, angry, angry, angry. So this would be a false positive or true negative. So we have to be carefully considering what exactly happened in that particular context. Multifactorial information has to be gathered rather than having a black and white approach of coming to a conclusion based on the indicators that's measured by the system.
So researchers aren't out of the equation yet, unfortunately. I assume students will still be sitting there watching hours of video, making sure that it's all still correct. I get part of that too, then I guess is, the importance of knowing what your baseline is and then being able to measure any differences based on what you're doing. So maybe just comment on the importance of establishing that baseline.
Yeah, that's very important. Again, the baseline would vary depending on the age or the lifestyle of the animal. For example, habituation. So you expose a sudden startling noise to a pig 3 times, 4 times, and then the sixth day you go and do that. They just look at, okay, I know what it is. They just play around. They don't get startled because they get habituated to it. So how do we assess for that? How do we overcome? So we have to be really cognizant when we look at developing these technologies and also establishing baseline. So when we look at baseline from the resilience perspective, the adaptation capacity perspective, for example, a pig which has been exposed to a certain, let's say, PR or SV or certain specific virus, and then it has overcome and it has become healthy, one pig. But the pig in the neighbor pen, the next pen, maybe it take very long time to overcome that particular viral infection. So how do we create a baseline for these? Because one pig came to the ground level after exposure to infection very quickly, but the other pig took a longer time to come to the baseline to become normal. So which means there is a dip in the performance index of that particular pig. So the baseline varies for the maybe similar age pig also, depending on the immunology, physiology, and behavior. So we have to be creating a holistic assessment in creating a baseline index to be able to establish. It's always a relative comparison before feeding, after feeding, with respect to that particular context. So when we create and develop and establish baseline metrics, all of these nitty-gritty details and nuances have to go into to be able to develop the what I call as a figures of merit in setting up a system for automated measurement of welfare indicators for pigs.
Yeah. So, it seems to be a very good kind of segue into the challenges then in developing the algorithms to interpret the emotions. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about that then.
Yeah. So when we look at the artificial intelligence algorithms, there are supervised algorithms and unsupervised algorithms. For example, I show a particular algorithm. This is an apple. And then this is a green apple. This is a red apple. This is an apple from British Columbia. This is an apple from China. I trained. So based on the memory, it trained itself. And then after many training, I show something unknown sample that looks like an apple. It looks for the future, color, shape, size, smell, and then say, yes, it is an apple. So it comes to based on the training and memory. But on the other side, sometimes the algorithm of artificial intelligence has the unique ability to self-learn, learn without any past history or memory of training, based on other futures, neural network, and other related architecture involved. So this is more of a self-learning, much more intelligent way of acquiring this. So we deploy both kind of algorithms to check how they are able to do it. Sometimes, a little baby calf when they are very small, based on the facial features, snout, etc., they may look alike to a small piglet. So there is a possibility for the algorithm to mismatch or misclassify. So how do we overcome that? What is the threshold? What are the boundary conditions through which the particular algorithm has to be trained? That we carefully look into it in terms of application of algorithm. The second thing is when a particular decision is being made at the middle managerial level or the upper managerial policy analyst level, if all of the information is decided by the artificial intelligence, then it may be overusage and heavy emphasis on AI. Maybe by a little bit dismissing the conventional knowledge the farmers come up with, the traditional farming knowledge, the human enabled wisdom and knowledge. During the development of AI, also, we have 2 or 3 different categories. For example, each and every step of development of algorithms, we have black box model, which means we don't know what exactly happening behind the scenes, how this algorithm work, but we know if we give certain input, it can provide a specific desired output. So this is a black box model. And there is a gray box model. Some elements are known, some are not known. And there is a white box model. So it is very important that we more often use white box model. And during each and every step of development of facial recognition, decision support system, we have a better understanding of how that particular algorithm work. What are the working principle and mechanism behind it? What are the shortcomings of that algorithm? Because this is crucial, which we call this as XAI or explainable AI, so that at the end of the project output at the middle managerial or upper managerial level, when a particular decision is being made, which may have cascading effect or ripple effect, this explainable AI based white box model comes quite handy to make sure that there are no bad influences of the technology in the management of swine farming. So more human-based intervention, human knowledge is incorporated in the development of technology. At the end, if there is a certain decision has to be made, humans can supersede, overcome the AI and proceed further. So during this phase, this white box versus black box versus gray box model, this XAI also plays a significant role. So these are some of the challenges one has to consider.
It always amazes me what it's been able to achieve now, and I'm interested in where it's going to go in the future. So I think we'll get to that, right? So maybe I'll ask you to kind of coming to the end now to maybe talk about where you envision that these technologies will be used to improve animal welfare, and then what you see as future trends.
In terms of my envision, I would say we are slowly moving from precision livestock farming to what I call as digital livestock farming. The idea here is how do we as human beings use technology as servants so that we get things done, save our time and labor costs, and overcome that marginal profit and create a much more sustainable profit. At the same time, provide enriched quality of life to these animals. So it's like a two sides of the same coin: profitability on one side and welfare on the other side. We balance it and we cater to both sides using technology as a means. New tools, new platforms, new techniques, new approaches would come that would slowly ease off some of the problems which we think not solvable with the help of AI and other technologies. So that could be the potential trend. For example, there is a concept called digital twin. It's like an avatar. We emulate physicochemical, biological component of the same animal or a process or system in farming, and then we can run a lot of what if scenarios. For example, if a specific nutrient for in the feed is going to be delayed because of a production issue down the road, what are the ways it could affect the physiology and the growth rate and so on and so forth. So we could run it without that problem actually happening. So then that help us to solve a lot of resources, lot of time, and offer more transparency in these process. The second aspect is spillover of diseases is zoonotic from animals to humans. So this can possibly be predicted even before it happens with the aid and usage of technologies, big data, Internet of Things, lots of sensor technologies that can enable that particular possibilities for human beings.
Yeah, very interesting. So before we get to our final three questions, I'll just ask, for a take-home message for our listeners, something that you want them to get from today's episode.
Technology is a double-edged sword, but it depends on how we want to use it. We can make it use as a servant for human beings.
Short and to the point. I like that.
It's time for our famous three. Working with nature and not against it. Piglets fed AX3 see significant and improved feed efficiency. Producers know the reality of needing to reduce antibiotic and zinc use. AX3 Digest is a highly digestible novel protein that promotes improved in-barn performance, piglet health, and minimizes the need for zinc in the diet. For more information, visit www.protecta.com. That's www.protecta.com.
Okay, before I let you go, we have three questions we ask all our guests. The first question is, what is your favorite swine-related resource?
The Big Progress magazine I used to read.
Yeah, okay. That one comes up too. I like that one too. The next one is a book or a resource outside of agriculture and swine that maybe you'd want to recommend to our listeners.
Well, I enjoy poetry. Rumi is my favorite. If you have heard of Jalaluddin Rumi, he's originally from Turkey or maybe Persia. He's a mix of Persia and Turkey. Some of these poems are really thought-provoking and really startling. Truly enjoyable way of looking at the world through the lens of Rumi.
Yeah, great. And then our final question is, when you look back at the people you've worked with, maybe producers that you've worked with, what is a characteristic that you think is particularly important for successful leadership or successful production?
Walk the talk.
Yep, I would agree with that one. That one comes up all the time. So it's really, I think it's one that, I think a lot of people can agree on. So, well, Suresh, it's been great having you on. Lots of great information, I think, and hopefully our listeners agree. So thanks once again.
Thank you, Dan.